story about a particular outfit member who was pulled over for a DUI. He responded by biting the finger off the police officer.
What?
And you know what happened to those charges?
Disappeared.
Dropped.
It's very unfortunate that those people lost their lives, but if the cops simply would have done what he was taught to do, those people wouldn't be dead.
Sam Giancana was actually hired by the Central Intelligence Agency to kill Fidel Castro. There's no dispute about that.
Is that verified?
That's verified.
It's not just conspiracy?
It's not a conspiracy theory. They reached out to him and asked him, would you?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Millennial's Choice Show. I'm your host, Matthew. I'm here with my brother, Danny.
What's going on?
What's going on, guys? And we're in Chicago. We had to come out here to learn more about the Chicago outfit from different perspectives, and we're very excited. We had a panel for you guys recently, and it did really well. You guys asked for more panels, so we're here today with a couple of very interesting guests. They're not new to the show. It's not their first time, but we're happy to have them on in person. I want to welcome back to the show Joey Seifort and Paul Whitcombe. Welcome to the show, guys, again.
Thanks, guys. Good
Thanks
to see
for
you in
having
person.
us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
Sure. Thanks for flying in.
Yeah.
It was an easy flight. Super quick.
Good.
We should come to Chicago more often.
You should.
We've never flown to Chicago. We always drive to Chicago.
Yeah.
Because our family's here.
Okay.
So we're staying with family. We're in Skokie.
Nice.
It's a nice
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
But with the kids, the two little ones, he has a little one, I have two. We're a little bit afraid to drive all the way, but next time we'll fly. We'll bring them over.
Yeah.
We'll do a little family vacation, and you guys could show us around the old neighborhood.
There you go.
We would love to.
Show us all the spots that the Chicago outfit would hang out in.
Well, there are a lot of them.
So I just want to know, like, start from the beginning for our guests that first time they're learning about you guys, they're seeing you guys here. Start from the very beginning, your backgrounds, your upbringing, and tell us how you guys came together. I want to hear that story.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, that is a good story. I'm a small town boy originally. I was born in Dixon, Illinois, which is the hometown of our president, Ronald Reagan. As a matter of fact, Ronald Reagan saved my grandfather's life as a lifeguard before my father was born. Wow. So if it hadn't been for Ronald Reagan, this would only be a 3-member panel.
Oh, wow.
But
That's interesting.
I moved to Chicago after I had become a lawyer. And while I was there, I worked for the federal government, for a federal judge as a law clerk. And during that time, a file came across his desk, which was the United States versus Sam Carlisi. Most people didn't know this at the time, but Sam Carlisi was the boss of the Chicago outfit. And he and his entire administration had been indicted. And unfortunately, the other law clerk got that file, but I pulled some strings and was able to get it assigned to me. And at the same time was the United States versus Gus Alex. And he went back to the days of Capone. And he was the one in charge of greasing all the palms and keeping the politicians and the police captains in line. And that's what Gus Alex did. So I got to participate in both of those trials. I got to sit with Antoinette Giancana, who was Mooney Giancana's daughter, through the testimony in a couple of those different instances. And I got her color commentary. And I will tell you that if you think Howard Cosell gave colorful commentary, sit next to Antoinette Giancana sometime when a turncoat is testifying against the mob. Really fascinating. And that's how it got started to me. I had some introduction because I'd gone to law school with a couple of Tony Accardo's grandchildren. And that's really what got me interested in it. And after that, I went to a major criminal defense firm and worked for defending some of these guys. So that's what got me started. And that was, I hate to say it, guys, but that was 32 years ago.
You're looking good, Paul. You show up with that Lexus and you look sharp and you're tall. You look great for your age.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who watch the Inside the Chicago Outfit, probably 2 comments will be about me is, boy, he's gotten older, but he's gotten skinnier. Yeah. So it balances out a little bit.
I don't know. I have a third comment to that.
I'm getting older, balder, and fatter. So
that's the third one.
I think the third one is how did you get more screen time than me?
Well,
you were the opening shot.
That's the funny thing is Joey opened the door for me to be in his documentary. The Deadly Associates, the Chicago Mob Deadly Associates. It was a wonderful opportunity. And I just shot a couple of shots, and he made that happen. It was a wonderful thrill, and he invited my new wife and I to the premiere. And I warned her ahead of time. I said, look, you're not going to really see me in this. This is about Joey and his family,
Right.
but thank you for being here with me. And we got there a little bit late, and so we were in the front row. And the opening scene of the movie is a 60-foot tall picture of my face
Oh my gosh.
talking. Boy, if you look in the mirror in the morning and think, oh, I don't look as good as I used to. Wait till you see your head 60 feet tall in high definition
Yeah.
with the sound and everything. And it was really quite a thrill. And poor Joey had COVID and couldn't even be there.
Found out that morning. I
couldn't have
tested
gone in
positive. Everybody's like, just go and stand in the back. I'm like, I can't do that to people.
Yeah.
Like, my family was there and a bunch of other people came out. I'm like,
Should have called it off. I'm like, I'm not. It's not running until I'm
theater
good.
was like full. People like were already there.
Shoot.
My wife was there. My kids were there. And I'm like, sorry, I can't go.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
It was a disappointment, though, because we were all there for him and for his family.
Yeah.
And we wanted very much to share that experience with him. But he still teases me to this day, as you can see. You got more screen time than I did.
Yeah, our audience sees just what we put out there, but we just spend some time outside. We'll spend some more time. We're just everyday people.
Yeah.
Crack jokes, have a good time.
Absolutely.
We've got a live audience of 3 in front of us today. I'm so happy about that.
3 very interesting people, though.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So
Yeah.
we're happy to be here.
Yeah. Joey, do you want to just talk to us, talk to the fans, people watching that don't really maybe know your full story? Just kind of give them the little tidbits of.
So the small part of it, well, it's about almost this year is 50 years, actually.
Wow, 50.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm still talking about it like it was yesterday. So it's like never stops. But so I was born in Bensenville, raised in Bensenville with my parents. And my dad got involved in the late 60s with the outfit. And the short of the story is everything went bad and they killed him in a gangland hit. And we didn't get any real resolve from that, or you call it resolve. We didn't really get any answers from it until the early 2000s when Family Secrets started rolling. Then they all of a sudden they wanted my mom to come in and testify, and all of a sudden they solved everything and they're charging somebody with it and the whole thing. And when you really get into it, the more we got into it at that point, everything that they brought to the trial in 2000, they already knew in 74 and 75. Like nothing really changed.
Yeah.
They swabbed somebody for DNA and stuff like that, but I mean, there was really no other evidence. They had my mom come in to testify, and my mom's like, I mean, I can't tell you anything different than what I told you 30, 40 years ago. But, they just had that, I call it the dog and pony show, to go in and make everything look good. I think the people that they had on trial, they knew they were going to get convicted. It didn't matter who showed up at that point. They had them targeted and they were going,
Yeah. It's like what's going on right now politically, right? If someone wants to attack an opponent, they're going to go to extreme lengths to take that person out.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear that story about 30 years later, 40 years, can you see being on the other side as an attorney working for the government? Can you see them perhaps suppressing or withholding certain cases until they could build a larger one that leads to that ultimate holy grail that they want to make this arrest or take down these group of people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's very common in federal prosecutions in the United States, especially if you're indicted by the federal government, you have a 99% chance of being convicted because they are so slow, so meticulous, and have so many resources. So in the case of Joey's father, they literally took 30 years to build this case. And imagine the kind of resources that the United States government has to bear. It was Tony Spilatro who said, well, I'm facing charges, and the title of the case is The United States versus Tony Spilatro. I don't like those odds.
Yeah. But then you go back to like justice and all these concepts that we're taught. But meanwhile, it's all about people's agendas and what, who's in power at the time. What are they trying to achieve? The headlines are a big thing. In Canada, we have headlines right now. It's not related to criminal activity, but the banks, they've taken people's houses over because mortgage payments have not been made, but they're not enacting power of sale, or in your case, you guys have foreclosures. We have more power of sales. They're not enacting on it because they're afraid of the headlines from the current government administration, who's then going to point the finger and say it's the bank's fault. It's not our fault that we're not building more homes, creating more supply. Doesn't that piss you off? Like, wouldn't that upset you? Like,
It's the optics of it all. And I'm curious, Paul, like from your experience, do you find media coverage for big cases play a role in terms of, prosecution and those kind of things?
It plays a huge role. When you get up in the morning and you see, for example, Joey Lombardo indicted, 75 to 100% of people immediately assume that he's guilty.
yeah.
And I've been fighting against that my entire career.
Especially when he goes out and run the night before.
That
they knock
doesn't
on his
help.
door.
But because like Tony Spilotro said, United States versus Tony Spilotro, who likes those odds?
Yeah.
And when you add all the spectacle in the public, especially about something like the Chicago mob, which was incredibly powerful. New York gets a lot of the movies and the publicity, but the truth is, in the 60s and the 70s, when Joey's father was involved, the true epicenter of organized crime in the world was Chicago, Illinois. The power that these men had. We're still finding out today about electing presidents, naming people to the Supreme Court, releasing their own members from prison after they were convicted. The power is unbelievable.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the main questions I wanted to ask you guys and get your thoughts on was, can you kind of describe to us the difference between the power dynamic with the Chicago outfit and the New York families? Like, how was that? Can you guys give us some insight on how that kind of worked during that period of time? Like, would somebody from New York be able to tell someone from Chicago to do something and vice versa, or no? How did that
I don't
work?
think New York could tell Chicago what to do.
But
But I think a big thing with Chicago, too, in New York, is New York, you had everybody in tracksuits standing on the corner, you know who they are. In Chicago, you could be standing next to some guy. You have no idea. He looks like he's just some guy going to work.
Yeah.
And he could be a boss.
Low
Or an
key.
alderman.
Very low key. Yeah.
Or a
But very
congressman.
behind the scenes and very
Interesting.
powerful.
Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't see New York giving Chicago any orders. I don't know. What do you think?
I think back in the 20s, it was a different story when Al Capone and Johnny Torrio consolidated all the gangs that ran Chicago during Prohibition, and there were a lot of them, into one consolidated outfit. Now, Chicago is much smaller than New York, but it was universal. The outfit ruled the entire city, the entire Midwest. Eventually, everything west of the Mississippi River. They even got into the Middle East, the Caribbean, South and Central America. Mm-hmm. New York, you have 5 families all fighting with each other over their own territories. And New York is much bigger, but when you divide it 5 ways, it just wasn't nearly the kind of power. Now, some of, like the Gambinos, the Lucchese, they had a lot of power, but you didn't see those people putting presidents in the White House or justices on the Supreme Court. And those are things the outfit did.
And as I was reading up about a lot of the influential characters and Sam Giancana and all these, Tony Ricardo, obviously, that's what led to one of the reasons why the JFK file was, you guys had to investigate it to make sure that, who was it? Was it Sam Carlisi
It was during Sam Carlisi's trial.
Yeah.
That you thought potentially could have been him that had some sort of involvement in the not only the JFK assassination, but there was another one with Fidel Castro's potential involvement with the CIA, right? But that wasn't Sam. That was somebody else, if I'm not mistaken.
Sam Giancana was actually hired by the Central Intelligence Agency to kill Fidel Castro. Wow. There's no dispute about that.
Is that verified?
That's
It's
verified.
not just
and
conspiracy?
It's not a conspiracy theory. They reached out to him and asked him, would you do this? Now, Sam Giancana was far too smart to actually go and try and kill a foreign leader, but he took the government's money. He led them along for as long as he could, and they legitimately got him involved. And RFK didn't know about it. And when he found out, he went through the roof. But that's real history. If you can imagine the government reaching out to the mafia for help in killing a foreign leader, yes, that really did happen.
I wonder how that call went. Like these guys just gave him a call and said, "Hey, we need your services," or I can't even imagine that. We want to hire you guys
Get
for
your
a job.
PayPal.
Yeah, want to hire you guys for a job, and we can't really get our hands dirty, but we know you guys like to get your hands dirty, kind of thing. Like that's how can you even how can
Well, you know
that
what it-
even
you know
happen?
what it
'Cause
reminds
we
me
think
of?
of the government as like
Yeah.
they're good, right? They're the
Are
good
they?
guys. You know,
Are
that's what
they?
we think or what we're told to think.
But you know what it reminds me of? It
They're
reminds me of
they're the biggest gangsters.
It reminds me of Larry Matzah's story with Greg Scarpa.
Yeah.
The guy was the
Grim
Grim
Reaper,
Reaper.
yeah.
He has how many bodies they forgot about. And meanwhile, he's an FBI informant this entire time. And that's how he's getting all these tips and how to avoid this and how to find these guys and take them. It was a 007. It was a license to kill.
Yes,
That's what it was.
yes.
So these things probably happen more often than we know about.
Right.
We just happen to know about these ones.
A few,
Yes.
few small portions of what really happened. And the dynamic of what was really going on is so complex and so interesting that Joey and I never run out of things to talk about because there's so many
always
things.
stories, yeah.
So many things.
When we were looking through the history and we saw obviously Al Capone, we all know Al Capone, and then Tony Accardo, one of the only guys who lived that life, didn't get killed, didn't spend a day in jail. Then you have Sam Giancana. So how were I was trying to understand the dynamics of the actual family or the outfit. Tony was at the very, very top, and then Sam came later, or was it the same time frame that Sam was involved?
Well, they were very close to the same age.
Yeah.
Sam was a little bit younger. But Sam came up through a street gang called the 42s. And the 42s were sort of like a farm team for Al Capone's outfit. We need some violent men that are willing to do whatever they will do. And these teenagers, Sam Giancana and another dozen who eventually became very powerful gangsters, went to work for the outfit. And Sam Giancana rose as a wheelman, a driver. He preferred Chryslers, and he was so good that he could take a corner quick enough to turn the vehicle so it would flip onto just the two wheels and it would proceed around the corner, and the policeman couldn't keep up.
Wow.
And that's how he got some attention. And then he was involved in a high-level assassination for Paul Whitcombe, who is someone we haven't talked about yet, but is enormously important. Went to prison in the 30s, got out, promised his wife he would reform. That lasted about 3 weeks. And then he became Tony Accardo's driver and bodyguard. And that relationship lasted until it didn't.
Yeah.
Until it didn't. And Sam was murdered.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting though, eh? How Tony made it and he didn't.
Well, Tony, like you pointed out, is one of the very few godfathers to, one, never go to prison, and two, he lived to a ripe old age. I remember the day that he died.
Yeah.
He was an old man, and he died of old age,
86 years old.
86 years old.
Wow.
Who would you guys say was the most influential member of the Chicago outfit? If you had to pick one person that kind of led the outfit to be where it was at its highest moment, who would you guys say had the most impact?
What do you think, Joey?
I don't know. So there's a lot of popular names, but I know there's a lot of people that were behind the scenes that have never been brought up,
Okay.
you know?
For sure. A lot of names that no one would recognize.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone thinks of Chicago, they think of Al Capone. But one you don't think about is Johnny Torrio, who brought Al Capone to Chicago. Johnny Torrio brought Lucky Luciano together with the other mafia bosses in New York and Chicago and Cleveland and Detroit and formed the National Crime Syndicate. You don't hear many people talk about Johnny Torrio, but that was his idea. I don't know if you two have ever seen Boardwalk Empire, the HBO
Yes.
series.
Heard of it, yeah.
It shows you a little bit about that, but doesn't really show the influence that Johnny Torrio had in forming what became the American Mafia. So he would definitely be in the top 5. Could I give one name? Maybe not, but 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah. I always feel that anytime anybody talks about the outfit, they always focus in on that 70s era when they were at the height of their power. Yeah. So that's, more earlier time that you're talking about.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But the power that they had and the stories that would just curl your hair to realize these people could pick up the phone and call the White House. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
That's probably why Tony never went to jail.
It wouldn't hurt.
That's just a testament to how much power they had.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Because of their infiltration of the government. And that's a difference between Chicago and New York. You asked earlier, what's the difference in the dynamics? Chicago controlled the city. Mm-hmm. The outfit controlled the city. From the mayor's office down, aldermen were made members of the outfit. Democratic ward committeemen.
I mean, they had everybody, judges. I mean,
Judges,
right down the line.
Congressmen, police captains, everybody. And the more you dig, the more that you find. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was revealed, of course, in Operation Greylord and Operation Silver Shovel. But they controlled the courts. They controlled the police. There's one story about a particular outfit member who was pulled over for a DUI. He responded by biting the finger off the police officer.
What? Wow.
And you know what happened to those charges?
Just disappeared, eh? Wow.
Dropped. Now imagine that kind of influence.
Yeah. It's assaulting a police officer.
Seriously assaulting a police officer in a way he'll never be able to forget.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what we call juice.
Mm-hmm.
Juice, yeah. Where do you guys get the term outfit from? Where does that come about?
I actually don't know that.
That comes from the Capone era. There were so many different gangs at the time of Prohibition. The North Siders, the South Siders, the Loop. And Capone talked about putting together an outfit.
Okay.
And it's been used in other cities as well, but it became the way to refer to the Chicago family. And it's very distinct from the Sicilian mafia that you saw in New York City. In Detroit, it was the Detroit Partnership. Because again, not strictly Sicilian members.
Got it. Hence the word partnership.
Yes.
That makes
That
sense.
didn't make it too far, right? That name does not roll off the tongue.
It's not as catchy as the outfit.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. What would you guys say was maybe one or two of the single most detrimental things that happened to the outfit that kind of led to its downfall? Was there something that happened specifically? I know with New York, it was RICCO that came into play, and it really gave law enforcement and an upper hand with the mobsters and the families. Was that kind of similar with the outfit? Were they impacted the same way?
I think that wasn't just with the outfit, though. That was down the line, outlaw motorcycle clubs, everything. That's literally the only way the government could get them half of the time is with a RICO charge. They just couldn't get them besides that.
Okay, cool.
So I personally think that was one of the bigger downfalls.
Yeah, when RICO was written in the early 70s, the government didn't really realize what kind of a weapon they had, but it's the nuclear weapon of the prosecution. And by the time that the straw man case and the Carlisi trial came along, and ending really with the family secrets case for Joey's dad, RICO was used to devastate the outfit.
Paul, could you just break down RICO from a legal perspective? Like, what does that mean for someone that's watching that might not exactly know what's entailed with RICO and why that's such a big tool that the government had?
Well,
what does that mean?
It stands for racketeer influenced and corrupt organizations. And essentially, the government has to prove that there's a criminal enterprise. And they prove the existence of the enterprise and 3 what they call predicate acts. In other words, acts in furtherance of the criminal enterprise. So but they don't have to prove, they don't have to have the jury agree unanimously on what those acts are. They don't have to agree on all kinds of things, just that there was an enterprise and that there were at least 3 acts committed in furtherance of the goals of the enterprise. And that way, if we all decided to start a new Chicago outfit, and Joey and I went out and robbed a bank and shot a guard, the 2 of you could also be indicted because even though you had nothing to do with that particular crime, that crime that we committed could be used to convict you of a RICO violation.
Just because you're associated.
With the
Yes.
same organization. Wow.
Yes.
Guilty by association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool, and the government really didn't figure out how to use it until the 80s. It took about 15 years.
I think it's a big crutch too when they can't get you, but they can throw a RICO at you, and then they know they can get you.
Right.
So I was gonna
They can't necessarily prove it, you know. But he talks to him, so let's just throw a RICO his way.
He stood next to him once and we
Yeah.
have a photo. I was reading it last night, this RICO thing. And the thought that came to my mind is, like, if they can just come up with anything to catch you, like, what's the point of being in that life? They know. They
Yeah,
know
but don't
who's
they
who.
have to put you, like, let's say in that example, wouldn't they have to put us directly in contact with you guys? Like, they'd have to have some sort of evidence showing that we were associates of the
We could be
organization.
We're already
cousin.
in that. We're already
So-
in that contact. We texted and talked to you guys on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
phone.
Not only that,
They
but
don't
there
know
are
what we're talking about.
photographs of us talking right
That's
Exactly.
now.
enough. That's enough.
That's it.
Evidence
Well,
to say.
actually, what it is they text me and talk to me. You don't. You're my brother. You're getting indicted too.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Because they're like by association, right?
We'll see you soon.
No.
Club Fed.
But my point is like with the, like I was just looking at it and I'm like, this is such a, okay, it's a tool to get criminals off the streets,
It's a blanket.
right? But
I just personally think when you're not smart enough to catch the criminal, you just throw a RICO at them because you're not smart enough to actually catch them what they're doing.
Paul, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on
what are
that,
your thoughts
on
on
what
we
Joey
t-
just said?
I think that it's the blank check of the federal government. A lot of states have their own RICO acts now because the federal government has shown how to do it. And it reminds me of the closing arguments in the Carlisi trial. Tom Sullivan, who was a former United States attorney, was defending Sam Carlisi. And he brought in what he called a Rube Goldberg machine. And Rube Goldberg was a cartoonist from the 30s. He would draw these elaborate and crazy machines that were way over designed and didn't need to be. And it was this big box, and it had a chute at the top and a chute at the bottom, and all these gears and things that would move on it. And he took and he poured in a whole thing of Army men, and then he put in several toy helicopters, tape recorders, wire devices, overhears. He put them all on the top, and then he pressed the button, and it smoked, and it chugged, and it made all this noise, and then it dinged, and in the end, out comes a piece of paper, which was the indictment. And he said, all these resources to go after my client, a retired grocer, and this piece of paper is all they've got as a result. And that's kind of how RICO works.
Yeah.
You mix everything up and you get this cake at the end where the jury is just overwhelmed. And the Carlisi trial took 6-8 weeks, and the jurors came back guilty on everything in a matter of a couple of hours because they were overwhelmed with what literally is the legal application of the old, let's throw against the wall everything we got and see what sticks.
and
think
as
that's-
you go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's the other thing that people don't talk about is, you talk about a RICO got thrown at them, but the investigations they do when they put undercovers in and stuff, the amount of money that they spend, you're not talking thousands, you're talking millions and millions of dollars. And sometimes they get convicted, sometimes they don't. And all that money's tossed. There was an East Coast motorcycle club, and they went after one of the presidents through a RICO, but they had multiple undercovers in, and it came out that they spent $50 million to try to get this guy, and he ended up walking on it
Oh, my God.
because of something that one of the alphabet clubs did.
So those
they
people got
screwed up.
fired. So those people all got fired.
I don't
For
know,
sure.
Did they?
Or should have been.
I mean, it's like it's
Even so, what about the $50 million that they spent?
taxpayer money.
Exactly. Taxpayer money.
So it's
So that's one
yeah.
club. Think about everybody else that they're going after and all the money they're spending there.
A really good example of exactly what Joey's talking about is we interviewed an outfit person, and that this interview has not been broadcast. But one of his stories was they were so hot to get one of his associates that when he parked his car at the airport, they went out and bought an identical car, down to the color, the options. Everything was perfectly identical. Swapped the cars out, took his car and wired it all up.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't know his car was missing. And then swapped it back several days later. And if you can imagine the amount of effort that went into that, that was just because they wanted to get recordings on this one guy. And it's only a tiny little fraction of what they spent.
Oh, that's unreal.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably easier ways to get a wire in his car than to duplicate it. And
Well, the point is they bought a car
Yeah.
with taxpayer money. That car is, who's going to keep it after? Like,
write-off.
it's evidence,
Right.
or whatever, right?
Right?
So is there somebody who's at the top of these things saying, this is our budget, and then this is who we're going after.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out. And then at some point they have to I feel like either they go all in and break the law to try to get these guys, or they have to call it quits. And who wants to be on the other side of that, talking to their superior saying, we spent all this money and we have nothing to show for it. That's what Francis says when he goes, I don't have a problem with the good guys doing their job to catch the bad guys, but when they start becoming like the bad guys, well, then what are we doing exactly?
Right.
How do you guys feel about that?
Joey has some good thoughts about that particular issue.
do the ends
So-
justify the means, Joey?
I was always raised, I'm sure like a lot of other people were, that, the police are good, the FBI is good, ATF, all those guys, they're all good because they're law enforcement and the whole thing. And I know from my perspective, and definitely my mom's perspective, they are not good. They're not good at all.
What do you mean by that?
I think they're willing to, and it's not just talk. I mean, it's been proven they're willing to go beyond the law to try to get who they want to get. They'll break as many laws, and they can get away with it. I mean,
But do you think that's better for society as a whole?
no. I personally, I think if you're not smart enough to catch the guy, then get smarter or figure it out. If you're breaking the law, then why don't you just join the guys you're breaking the law with? Like, look at some of the undercovers that go into the motorcycle clubs. They're running with them night and day, doing the same shit.
Would you say that that's bad?
Yeah.
Because they're
A lot
breaking
of
the
the
law to
times
try to
those
catch
charges get all thrown out. A lot of times they get thrown out.
but they still committed the crime, is what you're saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
But just because it's the name of justice, they shouldn't be allowed to have that kind of power.
Yeah, that's unchecked power.
Yeah.
When do they put out in a newspaper or in an interview how much money they spent to take Joey Lombardo down for Family Secrets? How much money did they spend? Do you know? No. Can you find it? I don't know. Can you find that?
Millions and millions?
Yeah.
There was a huge shootout with two motorcycle clubs in a casino. They had undercovers involved in all of that. Where's the financial paper trail that goes along with that? That we know how much you spend. That's our money you're spending.
Yep.
How do we know what you're spending it on?
So let's say we found out. Let's go down that rabbit hole. Let's
Sure.
say they had to, by law, tell us after every single one of these big cases happened what they spend, or even if it's not a big case. The American people find out about it. We're in Canada. We're finding out about our current government spending $5 million in hotels and millions of dollars on their vacations, hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money on their vacations. No one seems to care, really. A small group of people do, but it's not really changing anything. There's no accountability. Prime Minister's not coming on and saying, I apologize for whoever did that, or it was a whatever, mishap. But let's say we went down that rabbit hole and they did that. Do you think there would be a larger group of people saying, guys, we're not seeing the effects of what some of these people are doing. It's kind of just, that's why it's organized crime. It's not really trickling down into the public all the time, but you're spending $50 million. We have a homelessness problem.
Right.
Do you think those kinds of conversations would start to happen if we started
Definitely.
to see that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you not have conversations about why they're sending so much money overseas to countries that have nothing to do, or supposedly have nothing to do with?
100%.
Why are we sending all that money? On top of, you're going to spend $50 million, $10 million to go after one outfit guy. How much money are you spending to go after all the other guys that you're going after?
But would that really bring about accountability? Because we know, for
No.
example, how much
And that's the problem.
but that's the issue, though, right?
That's the issue with all of it.
Yeah,
You're not going to have accountability because they don't really care if we like it or not.
Yeah,
They're going to spend it anyways.
Who's they?
Who's
they?
The government. I mean, DEA, ATF, you can go through all the alphabets. They're going to spend it. For what?
And especially when it comes to like the mafia or organized crime, you pluck one out, the other guy takes his place. Like, what are you gonna do? Spend another $10 million to catch him?
but you can't just leave them, though. Like,
Well, it's not that you can leave
You
them,
can't
it's-
just say, okay, you know what? It's going to cost too much money to get these guys. Let's just let them do whatever they want.
But Danny, they're coming to some of these guys and giving them hits, contracts, paying them. So on one side they're good, they're useful, and on the other side we have to go after them. And like it seems like part of the system's broken. Like something's broken. In
But
that
here's
chain.
the thing, though. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. For example, they're putting the hit on Fidel Castro. They're trying to probably avoid an international incident by themselves not marching troops in to go in. They're trying to figure out a different way to go
But hang
about
on,
it.
but why do we have to take out Fidel Castro? That's the point.
Well,
What does that have to do with us?
What does that have to do
that's,
with
that's
anything?
the thing. Well, when you look back at that time, I'm not a history expert, but apparently they were in cahoots with Russia, right? And they're really close to the Florida border.
Missile crisis,
The
yeah.
missile crisis, right? So
Crisis.
that's
See?
that's the story that was given, right? Of for national security, we have to go and eliminate a threat that's really close to us. So I get what you're saying about it should be brought to light so taxpayers know exactly where their money's going. I just don't feel like it would do anything. You know what I mean? Like I still feel like they're a necessary kind of evil in a sense where they stop it from going to chaos. It's a necessary evil temporarily, with what they're doing with, like, let's say undercovers with MC gangs or whatever the case is. But I feel like that's better than just not doing anything at all. What are your thoughts on that? Do you guys agree?
I'll leave my thoughts as I did an interview with a guy he was in the life he went away because of it for 40 plus years. And he said specifically, listen, if you come after me and you get me legit, fine, I'll go away. But if you're going to start becoming me, then he's going to do the same back. Like if you're going to try to go after guys, just acknowledge, hey, these guys are smarter than you and you can't catch them. So get smarter or get other people that are smarter that can catch them. Legit.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a different time too. Nowadays, Jesus, there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
It's hard not to
Well,
see
like-
anything happening.
The focus is somewhere else now, right? Terrorism and other things that they're bigger fish to fry, so
Bigger
to
threats,
speak.
yeah.
Bigger threats. I just think, like with what Joey's saying, like if you're gonna become the criminal and you're gonna do all these acts, like how do we know the undercover at some point didn't, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So how do we know at some point that person didn't do something just for the benefit of their own personal life
Yeah.
and had a license to do that, right? It gets to your head, bro. You got that power and stuff. I'm sure we've never been there, but I'm sure it gets to your head. All of a sudden, you can't be touched by the gang because you're part of them, and you can't be touched by law enforcement because you're part of them. You change. People change.
Yeah.
I feel like people would change in that position.
I think it definitely gets to your head, just like looking at like someone like the Grim Reaper. Felt like he could do anything. Felt like he was unstoppable.
Untouchable.
Well,
Right?
he was untouchable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah. I just feel like there needs to be some more accountability, but we're not really seeing that these days, especially with, the assassination attempt on President Trump or former President Trump. I don't know if they've made any statements recently. I haven't been looking at the news these past couple of days, but the head of the Secret Service, what did she say? She said she's not stepping down, or a lot of people were calling her to step down for the failure, and she's like, no, I'm not stepping down. Where's the responsibility? Where's people taking account for the failure, the colossal failure, such a big failure that people are saying that it has to be some sort of conspiracy, because there's no way in hell that they would let that happen or that could happen.
If you want to talk corruption and outfit guys, let's talk. Where do you draw that line at? How deep is the government corrupted? I mean, how do you know? Who are they accountable to?
And that goes back to the whole reason that the federal government decided to go after the outfit in the first place. Yes, they knew this was going on. J. Edgar Hoover for years denied the existence of the mafia. But why did they get Capone? Well, Hoover got off an elevator one time, and the crowd didn't pay any attention to him because Al Capone was in the lobby, and he was humiliated. So his direction is get Capone.
Ego.
The same thing happened again when in the 50s when Hoover was saying, "Oh, there's no organized crime," and then the Appalachian Conference took place, and they got dozens of them all meeting in rural New York. It embarrassed someone. It caused political damage, and that's why you saw the shift to wiping out organized crime, because it caused political damage.
Yeah.
So you don't think it was because of a moral obligation, let's say, from our leaders to want to keep people safe and, you know?
You say
still a
moral.
virgin.
You say moral. There's no morals in the government.
Do you
don't-
think someone like Rudy Giuliani, when he was, in New York, do you think that person had a passion for really dismantling them? Do you think
Well,
someone like him?
I don't know.
I don't know him personally,
Yeah.
but I will say that I have a little bit of a different view than Joey does about law enforcement and government. I think that these are just normal people. There are good ones and there are bad ones
I
and
agree.
there are mediocre ones. And the bad ones sometimes are in control and sometimes it's the good ones, just like there are good lawyers and bad lawyers and good dentists and bad dentists. And your point about absolute power corrupting can really come home when you're the Attorney General of the United States or a Justice of the Supreme Court or whatever it might be. I think it's pretty tough to keep your moral compass straight.
I think it's also who's pulling those strings. You could be super cop. Whoever's pulling your strings and telling you what to do, that's unfortunately going to put you in a bad spot sooner or later.
It's true.
It's got to come from the top. It's not like a street cop is going to open up an investigation. That's going to come from further up.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as a pastor or as a police officer, you cannot get your real estate license. And the idea is that you'll exert your influence that you have in that area and potentially to your congregation or as a cop to whoever, and might coerce them into buying a property or an investment or whatever, and just to make money or steal their money. But the other day, Sarah got followed by a cop outside of a plaza with our kids.
Okay.
Gets out of the car as they're about to leave the plaza, comes up to the window. Sarah's my wife. "Hi, how are you? Weather's nice today." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Am I in any trouble, officer?"
That's really weird.
He's
yeah.
like, "No." He's like, "I just thought you were attractive and thought I'd come pick you. I swear to you, pick you." I got really pissed because I said,
There's nothing wrong with that, though, is there?
"Well, depends how if you're the cop. I guess not, right?"
That's crazy.
And he goes, and
But he was in uniform,
he
like
was in
in
a cop
oh,
car
wow.
uniform. So she puts the windows down and their kids are in the back. She goes, "I'm happily married, officer. Or I'm married, officer. I have kids." And he's like, "Oh, that's good." He's like, "Are you happy?" He asked her that question.
Are you for real?
She was very
Did
happy.
he turn his body camera off first? Of course, it was malfunctioning.
We don't have body cams on ours
Oh,
yet. Do we
that's
have body
interesting.
cams on all of our cops?
I got
Not-
pulled over the other day.
She had one?
She had it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
all it would have taken, but what would have happened if I called the department or whatever and I said, whoever was at this plaza, you could track the car today at this time,
Sure.
harassed my wife. I want to file a complaint. Where would that complaint go?
Yeah, probably nowhere.
Probably nowhere.
No,
Prove
probably,
it. Her
probably-
word against
probably
his.
Back on you with more trouble.
Now that cop
Yeah.
knows where we live,
Mm-hmm.
has our plates, has whatever. Right? So
Yeah.
it's like that. You can't have that, bro. There has to be like a system of
100%.
That's what Joey said, like a checks
Checks
and
and
balances,
balances,
right?
but
I think that moral compass was gone a long time ago. I mean, let's face it, whether you're talking about the church or you're talking about schools or you're talking about any time of government, police, anything, there's been corruption since people were involved or in charge.
Since Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
I just don't think though I don't really agree where it's like kind of sounds like you're blanketing it.
Yeah, that I'm not trying to do that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it sounds like that
Yeah.
because if we blanket it, then it is essentially saying like there is no point for
No, because then it takes
law
away from
enforcement and-
from the good ones compared to the bad ones.
definitely.
But
But there
There's
is
corruption
absolutely
everywhere.
so much
Yeah.
corruption, and there needs to be some sort of checks and balances because otherwise, if we never had any of these institutions, I think there would be complete anarchy and chaos.
I think like your situation, doesn't that kind of make you feel like nervous about all police?
Honestly, well, if I had the power to do so, say I don't have a problem with you, just take the badge off, take the uniform off, let's get in the ring,
Let's scrap.
and then we'll shake hands after.
Yeah.
Because you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's how I thought of it. That's a cop.
You should
What are
have
you
a
doing?
higher moral compass than that.
You need to
1000%.
have a high. You need to have it.
Yeah.
Because what if he pulls me over? He's gonna act like a dick towards me because I'm a guy. What kind of system is that? What kind of justice is that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Good apples and bad apples.
Right.
Yeah.
Like realtors. We are like there are such bad realtors. Like it boggles my mind. And we have a series that we call Grinds My Gears. What grinds our gears? We get there. By the end of the episode, we're pissed off.
Yeah.
I'm like, we should stop recording this kind of stuff because it bothers us, right? But that's the world. As long as people are involved, there's gonna be some level of corruption, right? The church, the Roman Catholic Church.
And it does make the good people look bad.
It does.
It does,
Yeah.
but that's why we have to stand out, Joey. That's why I feel like you have to go above and beyond to show people, like, listen, we're not all scumbags. Lawyers are infamously known as ambulance chasers, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean every single lawyer is like that, right? It's a stigma that we have, right? And with whatever it is we do, but it doesn't mean us as people are morally corrupted in that way, right? Fortunately, there are people like that in every industry, right? There's all kinds of people that are like that, but that's why I feel like there is a even greater call, greater duty for the people that are not like that to stand up and say, look, we're not all like that, and this is who I am, and this is what I stand for.
Where do you think that should come from? Because obviously somebody needs to come out and take it in that direction.
Morality?
That's a good question
Where do you think
because
the morality
But
should come from?
who starts the push to, hey, listen, guys,
it has to
we're going to
start from the
operate
top.
in a different way.
It has to start from the top, like you
Right.
said. Because if it doesn't start from the top, it won't work its way up.
Right.
And the people
It's-
behind the top too. So like we talked
Yeah.
last time on our episode with the president of El Salvador,
Yeah.
where he cleaned up in 2 weeks, cleaned up all of El Salvador, murder capital of the world, became one of the safest places in all the Americas. I don't know how it compares to the rest of the world, but safest places. And they grilled him. They grilled him on Tucker Carlson. Tucker the other day asked. They didn't grill him on that show, but they grilled him elsewhere. So Tucker asked him. He goes, "How do you feel about the people that are coming in and saying, the human rights activists saying, well, what about the rights of these people that are in prison now and like they're in these little cages? He built prisons for them, but he didn't just throw like the gangs and stuff in there, the MS-13. He threw the corrupt lawyers, the corrupt judges. This was a big operation. And he says, well, what about the rights of the woman on the street that's getting raped? Like someone's rights have to trump someone else's rights. And in Canada, there was a famous case with the freedom of religion and then the freedom of speech. And they ruled in that you can't just say anything you want. You can't just say the Holocaust didn't happen. And there has to be some sort of limitations to it. So I feel like there'll never be a way that they go about it that's perfect. My opinion is going to be like, I agree with you a lot on a lot of things, but my opinion would be I'd rather have a government that's willing to do that, go to that extreme length to really take the guys that are on the streets that are harming innocent civilians. Because I feel that I will never be someone that's caught in the crosshairs of the government, that they're going to do what they have to do and use the extent of the law to come get me because I'm an everyday guy that's operating legitimately. However, that's not always
You
true.
are associated
That
with
could
us
happen.
now, though. So
I know, right? I always imagine
Watch his
getting a phone
YouTube
call.
channel. All the evidence is
Better cut that
there. Meeting with all these
better
guys.
delete that.
You know what? You guys made the mistake because he's the snitch here. Growing up as kid, he's always been
All
the
lies.
snitch. Okay, but I think I would prefer that system where this president of El Salvador, there are innocent people in prison. He admits to that. He goes like, but when we say innocent, he's like, for example, they arrest you and then they arrested your cousin, but your cousin's completely innocent.
So what's their process time to rectify that?
They're going through that now. They're saying we're going through all the cases that we feel that they have some sort of, I guess, noteworthy reasons why they shouldn't be in prison, and they're willing to get them out of prison, of course. But you took like the result. You took the murder capital of the world and made it the safest country in the Americas. is that worth it?
Do you think you could do that here in the U.S.?
I think so.
I think that's a slippery slope, though, because you give one person
you'd
that
have
kind
a
of power,
revolution.
it's very risky.
It's dictatorship. You'd have
That's
a
what's a
revolution.
dictatorship,
Yeah.
right? Like I think that's so risky because you get someone like him. Yes, I think he's doing good, but at the same time, you get someone like that here, and again, all that power, you never know what it could do.
Why
right?
can't you just get tougher on the laws? People that are going in there with 5, 6, 7, 8 DUIs. Why do you have to give them that many times?
That's what I meant.
Or anything else? Why
Yeah.
can't you just get a little bit stricter
Yeah.
Yeah.
instead of letting the same people go over and over again?
So we had mandatory minimum sentencing with marijuana back in the day. We had somebody named Stephen Harper in power, and he's a conservative government, kind of like a Republican. And you couldn't now they jailed people for stuff that they're still in prison for, but now the government's selling marijuana. It's legal now. That's a problem to me. I feel like something's wrong there. But more recently, the government's changed. 9 years ago, we have someone else in power. And the police, there's a lot of break-ins in our areas, in our communities now, even expensive areas. Stealing cars, no problem. Stealing cars, no problem. 16-year-olds.
Yeah, you can watch it on TikTok all day long.
Yeah.
They're showing you how to do
They're
it.
showing you.
Yeah.
And so I always felt that if the government that's currently in power in Canada wanted to make that change, all that it would take is, because the police are doing their job. They're arresting these people. They're just getting out from the
They
courts.
are, but
imagine they came and said, whoever steals a car, minimum, you're going to jail 5 years.
But they're doing their job. But that goes back to, again, a lot of the times that's the entire job of your defense attorney. They're picking apart what the police didn't do correctly
Yes.
or by procedure. So does that go back to educating them so they're doing their job properly
I think so.
and not
I
making
think
the
that
mistakes?
plays a role for sure. I
Yeah.
think that definitely plays a role because you got to go about it the right way, the legal way. Definitely, you can't go outside of the laws that we have to get criminals. Otherwise, that's a slippery slope too.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
That's
isn't
what we're
that
talking
a defense attorney's job to pick apart what was done properly and not properly?
That's certainly one way of doing a defense attorney's job, but I view a defense attorney's job as making sure that the government meets its burden and that the defendant is protected by the laws and the Constitution. So here's an example. When I pick a jury, I'll ask them, who's on trial today? And the first thing they'll say is, well, your client. I'll say, well, let's think about that. Really, I mean, whose evidence are you going to be hearing? And whose witnesses do you have to believe? And is it really my client that's on trial, or is it the state that is on trial? Because you have to make a decision about what they say. My client doesn't have to say anything because it goes back to the Rube Goldberg machine. Think of all the resources that the government brings against one individual.
Yeah.
And that defense attorney is the only person that sits between them and the government, and them and the loss of their freedom, or in some states, still them and the loss of their life. So if you don't have a competent, well-prepared defense attorney, there's no checks and balances. Because in our system anyway, that's really the only check and balance there is on the power of the government.
It's a very interesting perspective. I've never heard it that way, where the government is on trial.
Right.
Technically,
Well, it's their burden.
It's their burden.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
Innocent until proven guilty, right?
We operate
to
on the
be.
presumption.
Supposedly, yeah.
Supposed
Yeah,
to be, yeah.
supposedly.
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Innocent until arrested.
Well, if you take that argument and you look at Joe Lombardo, they brought him up in Family Secrets with nothing new. There was nothing new over 40 years.
Yeah.
And what they had was shaky.
So where I disagree with the law in that sense is so there's obviously all kinds of cases that get thrown out because of a issue with how the cop arrested them, or the practice, as we're saying, or the process, I should say. But if you look at the case as a whole, I feel like if we could look at the case as a whole and there's enough evidence, the beyond a reasonable doubt, but let's say it was 99%. And the 1% is that this cop did something he shouldn't have done when he arrested the guy. I feel like the guy should still
enough
go
to
to
walk.
prison. But I don't feel like it should be enough to walk.
Well,
But he didn't follow proper procedure then.
But
Yeah.
the guy did.
Does that justify the crime,
Yeah.
though?
Does it justify
Does it
him
justify
walking
the guy-
away? is
Or
what I'm
walking
saying.
away, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends a lot on what you would call a technicality was.
Sure.
And a lot of that is a myth. There aren't very many cases that we have as criminal defense attorneys that get thrown out on technicalities. It does happen, but it's rare. And there are a lot of procedural violations that take place where the remedy is, sorry, you don't get your case thrown out because of that. Okay. So that's largely a creation of Hollywood. Yeah. When it does happen, it has to be something pretty serious.
Have you ever seen one of those in your practices? Like
oh,
something
sure.
Can you give us an example?
I can give you an example that shows you really how complicated it is. I had a client who was accused of burglarizing someone's house, and he broke through the basement window above the laundry machine and cut himself, and he left blood there. And but this was before DNA was really very advanced. So the police arrested him, and they tied him to a chair, and they arrested him with a SWAT team. And they stood around him with their M16s and their guns, and we have something called Miranda in the United States, where you have to tell someone what their rights are. They have a right to remain silent. They have a right to attorney. Well, they didn't do any of that. And he confessed. So he was arrested. We took the case to trial, and I pointed this out to the judge. They're standing around my client. They've got M16s. They're all armed. There was 8 or 10 of them. He's handcuffed. They didn't give him his rights. And the judge said, you know what, you're absolutely right. The constitutional right to remain silent is so fundamental to our system. The right to an attorney is so fundamental. And the police trampled all over those. So the judge said, I'm sorry, but Mr. Prosecutor, you can't use this confession. I'm letting this man go. Sounds like a great thing, except my client then went home, got his gun, went and got the guy who ratted on him and that guy's girlfriend, killed them both and himself.
Oh, my God.
So that's the kind of complexity we're talking about here. Yes, the right thing happened, but look at what cost those rights imposed on us. 3 people lost their lives because of it. And if the judge hadn't suppressed that evidence, those people would probably still be alive.
That's terrible. Wow.
So Joey, hearing that story, the guy got let off because of the way that it was handled. Mm-hmm. And it's like, maybe we talking here, those points we'd say, yeah, that's what should have happened. But then look what happened after. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
The cop should have done his job properly.
So that it never
had that problem. It's very unfortunate that those people lost their lives. But if the cop simply would have done what he was taught to do, those people wouldn't be dead.
I agree with you.
And I know that's a harsh way to look at it because people lost their lives. But that's what the law's there for, and that's what they get trained for.
Right.
Don't be super RoboCop and go crazy. Do what you're supposed to do. Do the procedure the way you're supposed to do it.
What did they say about that? How come all those cops surrounded them? They got the M16s. How come nobody thought to do that?
And what happened to the cops? Did anybody ask the cops, hey, this is what just happened. Do you feel bad about it or not? Or
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure that they did. I'm sure that they did. But I've seen lots of cases where the police went too far in order to catch a criminal, essentially becoming one. Because it's easy to get lost. Even good, passionate police officers can lose their perspective. When they know this is a bad guy, and they know that if they don't apprehend them, bad things are going to happen.
They just can't legally prove it.
And they can't prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that where they throw in the RICCO? Well, that's only for organized. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one thing we're missing about RICCO is incredibly powerful. What we're missing, and is present in the Carlisi case, in Gus Alex's case, in Family Secrets, is a cooperating witness.
You're missing that.
That's what's present in every one of those cases that put it over the top. Mm-hmm. So RICCO is an incredibly powerful tool, but it's almost always coupled with a cooperating witness. And that's what really breaks it open.
Mm-hmm.
50 Cent, that line, the D's ain't that good. These people are ratting.
Yes, that's right.
That's all he says. This guy.
Yeah. Well, there's people that make careers out of that, too.
Oh, yeah.
Snitch.
Oh, yeah.
That's their only career.
So at some point, courts or judges or attorneys or jurors, at some point, they're thinking like this person can't be that credible. Like some snitches just make stuff up just so that the attention's off them, or they just make stuff up. Period, because they tell them to make stuff up.
Well, because they want to get paid.
Yeah,
Or they don't want to go to prison for the rest of their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's tough. Justice.
The whole
is tough.
system just needs to be tightened up. That's all.
How do you do that?
I'm not the one to ask that. Yeah.
I feel like it's such a grayish line because it just sounds like for people that those cops that are, let's say, super passionate about what they do, but they want to they're willing, or I should say, to cross that line. Kind of sounds like a vigilante, if you ask me. Kind of reminds me of like Batman. Like he's willing to go and do that for the greater good, but is that really what we need? Is that what the city needs? Do we need
Like
those
Batman?
people? Yeah, like do we
Yeah,
need
you
those? No, but like do we need
love
those?
that.
Are you
No, like,
asking
doing-
if are you
I'm
asking
saying,
if you can
like,
do it?
No,
or-
I'm saying, do you guys think we need those cops or those judges, those people that maybe bend the rules just a little bit for the greater good of society? What are your thoughts on that? I know it's not an easy yes or no. Like, what are you guys thinking?
I mean, I think you can go and you can see cops that do things the proper way. There's a sheriff I was watching. He's on TikTok and he's always pulling people over. Everybody recognizes him because he's got the channel and everything. He does every single thing super nice when he walks up to your car, but he does everything the proper way. More people need to take what they're doing from him. Like, watch people like that instead of being, you get a lot of power hungry guys that are just behind the badge and they're angry or whatever's going on in their life. You need to go more like what these guys are doing.
Keep it
They're more-
professional and
Yeah, keep it
do it the right
professional,
way,
do it the
by
right
the
way.
book.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I think you can not save, but you can work towards a greater society by just doing it the right way. You don't necessarily have to.
But then the
You know,
higher ups
bend
have to
it.
work with them too, the judges and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like cops are there to protect and serve. That's their motto, right? Protect and serve
I
is
think
is
that's the way it used to be.
what it used to
Yeah.
be. But if you have from the top down, if you have people saying, guys, we're gonna come down on hard on you if you do this, if you do that, we're not playing games here. And I think if you take this approach that this president of El Salvador did, it's like, hey, I don't shut out all these human rights groups, activists. Who knows who's funding them, who's behind them, what their agenda is? These are criminals. And he went as far to say on that interview, these were satanic, worshiping criminals. The MS-13 became a group that was worshiping Satan, which is crazy to hear. Stealing babies and sacrificing them. Horrid thing, completely horrid. Yeah, you know what? Use the full extent of your power to get those guys out of the streets. I'm in support of that. But I don't know. Where do you draw that line?
I don't know, 'cause I think nowadays even the good cops are frustrated because they're arresting the same people over and over and over and over again, and the judges are letting them out.
Yeah.
They're making deals, and they're just, I don't know. It's a long conversation to have because I don't think it's one spot that you can point at.
No.
Paul, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really big question. It depends on whether you think the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
Certainly with the Chicago outfit, the way that they went about it over the process of 50 years dismantled the most powerful criminal organization in the world. And I'm not saying there is no Chicago outfit anymore, but it is not and will never be what it once was. And if your opinion is the ends justify the means in that type of setting, then by all means. But I'm not sure I would want to see us living in a country like El Salvador either.
Yeah.
Give it 5 years. This just happened. Give it 5 years. Real estate's going to boom.
Oh my God.
People are moving there.
Yeah.
I have clients moving there. They're saying, you know what? It's cheap. We're Spanish. We speak Spanish. Whatever. They're moving there. So it's like the world is changing. You're seeing a shift. Some countries are going on one side, and some countries are going on the other side. Would you ever thought, in your lifetime, you'd witness a potential assassination attempt on a former president?
Well, I'm old enough to. This is my second. I remember when they shot President Reagan.
Reagan, yeah.
You know, as I was saying that, I'm like, shit. Like, I'm talking about myself. But it's absurd. Like, it's absurd. Absurd. These things we read about happening somewhere else.
Yeah.
For it to happen very close to home. And we could go down that rabbit hole, but
Do you guys think it was a conspiracy?
everything's a conspiracy.
I don't know enough about it to say. I know a lot of mistakes were made for sure. When you have people on their phones videotaping someone on the roof and not able to get any help, something's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think happens in the fall on
Too much
November 5th?
unchecked power.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think happens November 5th?
We don't even know who the candidates are at this
Yeah.
point.
We were sitting and eating, and Biden just stepped down today.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
So
Get out.
it's all up in the air now.
What do you mean step down?
No way.
Step down.
For
Whoever
our
his
audience,
handler was, they let him step aside and go to sleep.
Oh wow.
He's out of the race for
Yeah,
real.
he's not. Yeah, he's not in the race.
Biden's
That's
anymore.
on.
huge.
Yeah,
Wow. Because when you guys just said that, I'm like, wait, are we missing something? Like
Yeah.
we've just been getting ready for today, and I haven't been on my phone at all.
I
so-
haven't. I don't
you
even
guys
have
were
my phone.
literally doing another interview.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So it just happened.
It just happened.
Oh, that's insane.
But Trump is in,
Yes.
obviously,
Wow.
and so now they're gonna figure out Newsom. No, Michelle Obama or Newsom's gonna come in.
Hope not.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see what happens now. Wow.
Yeah, we
That's
just don't
very
know.
interesting. Wow.
There are a lot of legal
We can
questions
all
to be answered.
vote for Paul.
Wow.
Oh, no, thank you. If
Mobologists.
nominated, I will not accept.
I will not
If
accept.
elected, I will not serve.
Guys, this was great.
Yes.
Time flies. Like we were just interviewing Mario, and it's like time's flying. We've been over an hour recording with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to leave our audience with? Where can they find you guys? Connect with you?
Facebook's the easiest.
Yeah, Facebook is the easiest place to find us. And, of course, Deadly Associates is a phenomenal book. If you get a chance, the documentary is on quite a bit. You can find it and learn a lot about what Joey and his family went through. The Chicago outfit, Kings, Killers, and Clowns, is on Facebook page. It is a Facebook page with thousands and thousands of images and stories, and there are members there who are connected. And
It's a very
keep an
active
eye on it.
page.
And it's a really good place to reach out to us.
Love it.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. This was fun. I wish we could go even longer, but we could probably be here all day.
We'll have to come up by you guys next time.
Yeah,
Yes. Well,
You're
the
very
problem
welcome,
the
yeah.
problem is some can come and some people can't come. So I think it's easier if we come to you
Probably.
all
Yeah.
the time, right? But
For
we-
me, at least.
yeah. We got to do.
Paul's
a part
probably
two.
okay.
You guys should come out, check out Toronto in the summertime. It's
Yeah.
nice.
yeah, I've been there.
It's
It's
nice.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Love to have you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Of course.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
for coming on.
Appreciate
Guys, till next time, we're out.